Welcome to the Legacy Through Land podcast, where we're dedicated to empowering you on your journey to land ownership and management. I'm Tyler Markham, your host, and each week we'll dive deep into the world of land investing, management strategies, and the transformative experiences tied to owning your very own piece of dream dirt. With our expert guests, inspiring stories, and actionable advice, we're committed to helping you become a better land manager, hone your investing skills, and start building your family's legacy through land. Now, let's dive into this week's episode. We hope you'll enjoy. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Legacy Through Land podcast. I appreciate you joining me for this week's episode. I've got a very inspiring guest today. He's one of my good friends. He's somebody that I've learned an immense amount in both my hunting career, personal career, professional career. This is Mr. Bryan Tanner. Bryan is actually a West Virginia native, just like myself, and that's where we first met. He came many moons ago to speak at the church that I was attending at the time in West Virginia, and I learned a ton about his story, but I really learned how he was such an accomplished hunter and how he had been on so many different journeys through his hunting career, and I was just immediately drawn to the desire to learn from him and just to learn to get better in my woodsmanship and just my craft. So he's been somebody that I've leaned on heavily in the last handful of years. We've grown into a really great friendship that I just immensely benefit from. So he's got a wealth of knowledge. We could go through days and days worth of podcasting together, and I will absolutely bring him back on multiple times so that we can cover some of the brain dumps that I've been able to benefit from. But today's episode, we're going to dive deep into the what to look for when analyzing a property for recreational use. We're going to look at everything from Bryan's lens of having been an incredibly successful hunter. He's killed so many species all over America, but most notably for me, he has killed giant whitetails year in and year out. And he's going to tell you what he sees, what he looks for when analyzing a property, so you can get it right on your purchase the first time. You can buy once, cry once. Who knows? You may get a deal and you may not have to cry. But without further ado, my good friend Bryan Tanner. All right. Welcome to another episode of the Legacy Through Land podcast. I am your host, Tyler Markham, and there's three things with this podcast that I have to do or I haven't done my job. Number one, I've got to empower you to dream bigger on focusing your efforts towards buying that first piece of dirt. I've got to help you hone your investing skills if you've already taken that leap into buying your first piece of dirt. And also, we've got to teach you how to be a better steward of the land. If I haven't done one or more of those things, then we haven't done our job, and you shouldn't listen to this podcast. So I think I can accomplish that, and I'm going to jump right in. We have a great guest this week, but I'm going to hold him hostage for a little bit while I give you an update from our company over here at Legacy Acres Land Company. It's been a week. It has definitely been a week. It's hard for me to kind of go through the motions of learning how to run a podcast like this and also remember what were the chaotic but also either successful or noteworthy events that happened in our company if it happened to be a failure. So some of the notes that I've taken from this week is we, in just the last 4 or 5 days, we listed a really nice piece of property in Athens County. You'll have to go on our website. This thing may already be sold by the time this podcast airs, but we listed 50 acres with a really nice cabin. And I want to highlight this piece really quick because the genetic potential on this property is the highest I've ever seen. And that is really hard for me to say, especially with someone that's our guest today on the phone. This is really hard for me to say, but the genetic potential on that farm has been incredible to see. And it's been meticulously managed by the previous owner for over a decade. This guy shot, I want to say, 11 deer over 150 inches on a 50-acre farm in 12 years. So, I mean, that alone should be mic drop worthy, but go look at this cabin. This cabin is a dream home. It is unbelievable. It's breathtaking. Yes, I absolutely wish I was a net multimillionaire and I would keep this place because it makes me sick to sell it. But it's in Albany, Ohio. It's off the highly coveted 681 corridor. Incredible area. Premium genetics. This guy has meticulously spent tons of time making it as great as it is. Hand-hewn log cabin. It's just a beautiful Beautiful place. So go check that out. Our good friend Jeremy Mills has that listed. Like I said, by the time this airs, it may be gone. But that was one that we were able to successfully get across the finish line. That was a interesting transaction for sure. Really, really emotional for our seller because he is, and it's exciting for me to be able to talk about this because he is accomplishing that dream building journey that we hope to help you as a listener accomplish, where he's graduating. He's graduating from a smaller farm to a bigger farm. He's going from 50 acres to, I think, 185 with a farmhouse. And essentially, as daunting as this may sound, he's going to start all over. And for me, and I know for Mr. Tanner, who's on this podcast today, it's exciting when you get to start over and you get to play the game again. So he's going to now start reinvesting and re-sweat equitying and all the things into his new farm. So it's exciting to see. I was glad we were able to help him. And obviously, I think it's going to be a beautiful farm for the next owner. I wish I could keep it. So if anyone wins the lottery and wants to partner with me, we will gladly take it off the market. Listed at $749,900, so $750,000. And in that area, that's top. I mean, that's top of the market. But I will tell you that a ton of that value is the house. And I'll tell you that another ton of that value is the genetic potential of the property. And then I would tell you that another ton of that value is the topography of that property. So there just literally is no negatives. Go check it out. So that's that one. We also closed on a piece of land in Baltimore, and not Baltimore, Maryland. It is Baltimore, Ohio, a smidge smaller town than Baltimore, Maryland. But this one took us a really, really long time. And I'll tell you, this is part of my own growth journey. As you guys listen to this podcast, I'm growing in myself here as a business owner. And this piece was more of a commercial land play. It was an opportunity where we knew that farming was likely, it's not its highest and best use anymore. It's uniquely situated between a town called Pickerington, Ohio, and Baltimore, Ohio. So it's really well positioned. But no woods to speak of, or the hunting juices would have already gone off. But this one's going to be a really nice play for us to graduate somewhat into our commercial land buying and selling side of the company. And this one is uniquely zoned small. This is a mouthful. Small scale commercial business. So it's a unique situation because there's already like 9 or 10 approved different businesses that could go into that property today. So it's a really, really cool opportunity. I'm excited to see what happens with that property. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for a buyer who sees the benefit of having a rural business really well situated between two very, very rapidly growing towns. So that's that one. That one was an exciting one. Took 9 months to get through the process of due diligence and kind of figuring out if the price point worked. And we were able to get that closed. Shifting gears, Mr. Tanner, who is still held hostage, doesn't know this, but I went shed hunting with his son, his oldest son, today for hours. We shout out to Alec Tanner. We put in, I think my Apple Watch said 4.5 miles, 13,000 some odd steps, and we got skunked. We found a little tiny shed, but we did find the pieces to the puzzle of a property that I'm improving for my own self. It's kind of my new home farm project. So we were able to find some spots on the farm that I think are going to be incredible stand locations. And so I didn't feel like it was a complete skunking, but here's the cool part is today is March. I'm looking at my phone, March 16th. I pulled the first latched tick off of my arm today, off my armpit, I should say, on my rib cage. So not exciting, but hey, if you're an outdoorsman, it is what it is. This just kind of is part of the territory, but it was, 50 degrees for the most part of the day. So they're already, try as we may, and we all hope that ticks aren't out. They out, my friends. Pulled the first latched tick. Last update. This is, so ironic how I will have to say this, but I found my biggest shed ever yesterday while leaving I got to be careful how I say all this because I know you people. Don't be taking my hunting spots or I will find you. Done in my best Liam, whatever his name is, voice. I found the biggest shed I've ever found, and it was from the truck leaving my daughter's practice for a sport close to my house. That's all I'm going to say. And it's on my desk, so I don't know that this camera situation, if you're watching on YouTube, will do this justice, but this is a really big shed. It is probably a 14-inch G2. It's just a big 8, and it's real massive, real heavy base. Giant shed, just laying in a cut bean field. Yes, I went back later today. Didn't find the other side, but largest shed ever found from the truck, leaving a practice. So keep your eyes open. Them sheds are dropping. All right, I've held him hostage for enough time. If you can't already tell, there's a bunch of chaos going on with us, but the point of this podcast today was not to talk all about Legacy Acres land. I cannot wait for you guys to meet someone that I'm privileged to call a really good friend. Bryan has been so intentional with me, probably more intentional than anyone I can think of, in helping me grow as a hunter, grow as a businessman, grow as a land buyer and seller, and just kind of grow as a professional. So he's a ton of knowledge, and I'm gonna give you this much, that it's going to take multiple episodes for us to have Bryan actually dispel all of the knowledge that he has deposited on me, that I'm fortunate to have just a glimpse of. Every time I'm with him, I feel dumber, but it's the greatest place to be. So today, our topic that we're really excited to jump into is he's going to help you guys understand from a professional lens how to analyze a piece of property when you're considering buying either your first farm or your second farm or your 50th farm. What are the actual things that go into analyzing a property that could or could not be good for recreational use? So Bryan, thankful to have you. Thanks for being on tonight.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Tyler. It's good to be here.
Yeah, we've been trying to do this for a minute, and we're both real busy. So this is, I'm actually usually in bed by now. I'll give this plug, and then we're going to jump right in. It is 9:44 p.m. as I am saying this. I've usually been in bed for an hour and a half. So if it wasn't Bryan Tanner, and I didn't know he was equally as busy as me, we wouldn't be doing this, but we are doing this. So I am excited, full of juices. I want to jump right in, Bryan. I've already said this, that there's so many things that we could talk through. There's so many topics that you guys are going to see. The more we bring Bryan on, and the more we deep dive into some of the things that have crafted his, I'm going to guess, more than 40-year outdoorsman career. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
We just had to decide. We just had to pick one of, what do you want to dive deep into, and what brain dumps can we do, and in what avenues? Or I would just literally, you guys would just glaze over if we went into the ability that he has to read topography. We're just going to tease you on that one, and we'll save it for another day. So Bryan, what are we going to talk about today, and why are you passionate about that?
Well, one of the things that I think is especially in the buying and selling of land, Tyler, I think sometimes when we think of it, land investing, we want to think of these 300, 400, 500 acre blocks of land and these $1 million, $2 million, $3 million deals. But the reality is that there's some really good values out there in properties, maybe even, at 20 acres, 50 acres, 100 acres. And I'd like to talk about, as we move on, even a couple of examples particularly, but, how do you find those? How do you look for those? And why are they such good deals? I think that understanding that, and being able to, and once you're able to obtain them, then being able to develop them properly. I think, that's the key to investing on a budget, if you will.
Yep.
And so, you don't have to have $1 million of cash on hand to be able to get in this game. And I began investing in land really, really early in life. I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, hardly. But it was, it was the best thing that I ever done at the time. And then obviously as it began to grow and began to learn from other people, I was able to kind of add my passion of hunting, into this and marry the two. It's really, really worked out well. And I see a lot more opportunity out there for that 20, 30, 50, something less than 100, let's say,
Yep.
pieces of property that people just skim right on by and they never think about, and well, there's a lot of potential there if you know what you're looking for. And so
So
yeah,
I've done a terrible job here. I want to back us up about 10,000 miles for a second.
okay,
I know who Bryan Tanner is, and I can't wait for Bryan Tanner to dispel what your mind and brain and vision sees when you're analyzing a property. But let's just pretend our listeners have no idea who you are. I want you to start back as early as you can, because I can't think of someone. I literally can't think of someone more infatuated with being in the outdoors. Someone who has embraced the outdoors more than you and your life. Back up with us. Who is Bryan Tanner?
well, I grew up in. Thanks for asking that. I grew up in Central West Virginia, and that's an elegant way of saying Clay County. I am. And all you West
Let's
Virginians
get
know
real here. Yeah.
But yeah. So, but I mean, I'm very. Let me say this: I'm very proud of my home, and I love my people, and and I'm very proud of where I grew up. But
why? I mean, seriously, why? I'm a West Virginia native. We've already, we're gonna have
Yeah.
covered this on our intro, but obviously it's an incredibly deep spot in our hearts. Bryan kind of low key pulled me to Ohio. It's his fault, but
Yeah.
talk more about that, because I think it matters, obviously, to when we say,
Yeah.
hey, I cut my teeth, climbing the hills of Clay County. It comes into how you learn to be such an outdoorsman. So really, let's dive in. Where is Clay,
Yeah.
West Virginia?
So part of the culture that I grew up in, and part of the culture that I grew up in, obviously hunting was very, very steeped in that. And I have told anyone that will listen, if you ever really want to be a really good spot and stalk hunter, learn to squirrel hunt. Take your kids squirrel hunting. And to this day, and let me say, I'm so thankful. I thank God every day that I've had the opportunities to do the things that I have been able to do. In my wildest dreams, I would have never imagined going to some of the places I've been to and doing some of the things that I've done. And I can't be more thankful for that. But I don't care if you're, hunting elk in the Bob Marshall, or whitetail in the plains, or in the hardwoods of PA, or the Midwest. Still hunting, or slipping, as my dad would call it. Slipping is still slipping, man. I mean, it doesn't change,
And what was your dad? Because I want to benefit from this as well, just along with our listeners. Was your dad part of your journey into hunting, or who?
Yeah, it was my dad. I will have to say, my dad always had us outdoors, whether it was hunting or fishing. He never, he always had time to take us hunting and fishing. Always. It was as much a part of childhood as going to church. I mean, we went to church on Wednesdays and Sundays, and actually ours was Thursdays and Sundays. But and it was every time the doors were open, we were there.
Yep.
And then during hunting season, pal, we were hunting. And there wasn't a question what we were doing. Mostly squirrel hunting. Yeah, squirrel hunting was a big thing. So I am the last of the generation where, and it's hard for people to believe this, but squirrel hunting, the opening day of squirrel season, was significantly bigger than the opening day of deer season. And it wasn't close.
No way.
Oh, yeah, it wasn't close. And there'll be people who watch this podcast that remember that day.
So I already have to eat crow here. The listeners are going to laugh, but my first, and you may not have known this, but my first squirrel, I didn't know that you hunted squirrels without dogs. I thought that everyone hunted them with dogs, because my grandpa had squirrel dogs, and they would retrieve the squirrel, and then you would have to go find the dog. That was the first challenge: find the dog, then find the squirrel. So you're telling me that you still hunted, you squirrel hunted just from still hunting. See, I already
Yeah.
have to eat crow. I don't know that I've killed maybe 10 still hunting versus probably 200 with the dogs.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, the original spot and stalk was squirrel hunting, and
Okay. So
so
how young? How
yeah.
young? As far back as you can remember, how young? When was the outdoors ingrained into you? When did the itch start?
Oh, as far back as literally as I can remember. My mother has a picture of me with my dad squirrel hunting, and I have no memory of it, but I was probably in linens or diapers, literally, and I had a
And
little
just so everyone
410.
knows, the statute has run on underage hunting. We're
Yeah.
we're
So
good.
so yeah. I shot my first squirrel at age 4 or 5 with a 410 shotgun, and yeah, I shot my first deer
I was
at
going to go
age
there next.
11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me you remember your first deer. You said age
Oh yeah,
11?
yeah, yeah. It
Gun,
was age
bow?
11. Bow. Yeah, yeah.
No
It was age.
way. Your
Yeah,
first deer was a bow.
yeah, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, first, and it was the old bow. It was called a Polar LTD by Bear, and you had to string it up before you went hunting. It had pulleys on it, and so you would unstring it after you got. Now, I'm not talking about a recurve. It was an actual compound. It was probably, I don't know, 45, 48 inches long, and
Whoa.
it probably shot about 125 feet per second.
I was
And
going to
here,
ask what was the range on that thing?
yeah, well, okay. So the first deer I shot was 45 yards. So
No
yeah,
way.
and my pins were screws. Like I didn't have actual pins, so they were actually screws that were pretty small, and they had a nut on the back of it, and you kind of just it was homemade. You're not going to believe this, and if my cousin Earl, if you see this podcast in the comments, drop a picture of it. He still has the bow. So my first, what you would call compound bow, my dad's friend Alfred took a fork and a spoon and welded on the bow my first arrow rest. You wouldn't believe how accurate that bow was and how many good bucks I shot with that bow.
That is
Yeah.
unbelievable.
I can't say it on the podcast
I
here,
mean,
but
I can't believe you're saying your first deer was with a bow. Like, let alone that is insane. I killed a pile of deer with a gun, and then my first deer with a bow wasn't until I was like 16, probably.
yeah.
And it sure wasn't 45 yards.
Yeah, yeah. Now having said that I grew up, in a little different time, and but so my dad and his one of his cousins were one of the first people really that kind of got into the archery thing. You know, compound bows. I was born in 1973. So, I'm 51 years
we're
old
aging
now.
ourselves here. Okay.
Yeah, I know. So, so the 80s was when it was really the mid 80s is when archery began to take off into what we're seeing it today. See, I remember when Pete Shipley, and if you young guys listening don't know who Pete Shipley is, listen, you need to go learn who that
Pause
is.
this podcast.
But yeah, so guys like Pete Shipley and Jack Frost and you guys, Ben Pearson, you guys need to go learn who that is if you want to know your history. But they had came out with the first bow that shot 250 feet per second, and everyone was just amazed. No one ever thought you'd ever break 300 ever,
Oh.
And it was the PSE brand that did it. And
Okay.
so yeah,
My
long
first
before
bow was a PSE Nova. So, or no, hold
yeah,
on.
yeah.
PSE Nova. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, it was a different time. It was a different time, but at that time, we didn't have really the distractions of today, and so my generation, we focused on the outside,
Yeah.
on doing things around the ponds and in the woods. We
Yep.
learned our trees. We knew what every tree was. We knew when white oaks dropped, when red oaks dropped, black, and we knew how to identify those. And it was just part of our culture. And
Man,
why I could go in, for, for
believe
a
me,
long
that
time as to say why, but, and even where you grew up in that part of, people were really woodsmen at that time. They were hunters, as well, but they were really woodsmen as well. And they understood the environment that they were in and how different animals related to that environment and how uh, you know, the timing of that food source and the animal movement is something that we've lost a little bit of, even though the information is still out there. Our lives are very busy today. Mine is too. I can't say that it's not. As well as anyone that
I mean,
we've
it's
all
10
gotten
p.m.
busy,
and
but
we're recording a podcast
yeah,
just
for
to get
sure,
it
for
in
sure.
so that if it
So, but
happens.
yeah, so that's what happened, and my dad and my uncles, and a lot of family friends. Alfred Dawson was a huge impact on me. Um, they were not trophy hunters in any way, shape, or form. They didn't understand management like we understood it today. People come around and they look at my trophies on the walls and in the rooms, and I tell everyone, guys, there was a time that I would have walked up a hill backwards to get a shot at a button buck.
Yep.
Being a hunter is a process, and you can't skip the process.
So true.
And I can remember just shaking violently. The first racked buck I saw was a 6-point buck, and literally my back hurt. I shook so hard my back hurt. And I miss. There's a part of me that misses that now.
Yep.
Really.
Yep.
Now, again, I'm very thankful for the journey that I've been on, but
Right.
you have to go through that. And so don't ever be embarrassed of going through that. You should go through that,
Well,
and
I mean, I think it's we've almost made it impossible to not go. We've tried to
yeah,
make it possible to skip it, but it's still to me impossible to actually skip part of the journey. And I'll rant for a second. We see people skipping it with the dads that the first deer the kid shoots is a 180 10 point,
right.
and generally, and I hope to be wrong, that some of these remain to be seen, but their careers don't last super long. We
Correct.
didn't watch Taylor Drury, his first deer be a 180. We didn't watch that. We know that. We didn't watch some of these folks that I think are going to last. Start on second or third base, and I think that you're speaking to it. There's a reason. There, if the
Yeah.
foundation isn't built, you won't build a tower from that. But so, all right, we could go, honestly, we could go for 6 hours
Yeah.
on Bryan's deer
Yeah.
history. Here's where I want to jump to 2 things in your timeline here.
Yeah.
Because I want to give people a tease of who Bryan is, but we're going to have you back on for other stuff and other
Sure.
Bryanisms. And you guys, he's going to give you his phone number at the end of the show. I hope that you respect that I get first dibs anytime there's hunting talk to be had, and I also get first dibs on reading topo maps. So he will offer his availability, but you're going to be in second line behind me. But anyways, jumping on I want to jump a little farther from. Okay, obviously it started at a young age. I know, and I think I know, so I want you to school me here. Rattle off where have you hunted? What comes to mind when states, areas? Where all have you hunted? What comes to mind?
Well, I've been fortunate to be able to. I've hunted whitetail just about everywhere they exist. I have
And I'm
my
putting
first
him on the
trip.
spot, by the way, everybody.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
putting him on the spot. He's ready to talk about the meat, but I want you to know who Bryan Tanner is a little bit. So, what
Yeah.
comes to mind?
So I met. Let me tell you how that started. I guess on the traveling and hunting and the trophy aspect and what started. So or how this really began to mold.
Yep.
So when I was in high school, and I think timing is everything. When I was in high school, there was a bow hunter that was in magazines everywhere, and his name was Chuck Adams. And Chuck Adams was the very first hunter that took all 29 North American big game animals with bow and arrow. Now, we didn't have Facebook. We didn't have social media. So we were following him through magazines. So every time Field and Stream or Bowhunter magazine came out, you were rushing to get it to see where Chuck was at with his pursuit of the Super Slam. And as a matter of fact, Easton named an arrow after him, the XX78 Super Slam. That was named after Chuck Adams. And they were orange. They had the orange, if you remember those. Some of you guys will.
I don't, but wow, this is good. I didn't know that. I know the name.
Yeah.
Okay, I know the name. I don't know the notoriety, though, so shame on me.
He was the first, Fred Bear, we think of him as the kind of like the Michael Jordan of bow hunting, if you will. But really, it was Fred Bear would be like the Wilt Chamberlain in my mind. Probably the greatest of all time that invented the modern game. But Michael Jordan put basketball on the map. Chuck Adams put bow hunting in pop culture.
Okay.
And so that's how I perceive Chuck Adams. And Chuck Adams, I was able to see him do this in my formative years as a teen. And as you well know, I hunt many different species, and I think that's the reason why. I think there are a lot of guys out there, and I respect this, who are focused whitetail guys, or focused turkey guys, and they take one or two species and they truly dive into it and become very proficient at it. That's just not me. I want to hunt anything, everywhere, anytime, any style, and I want to do it with a bow and arrow. And I think that comes from my childhood of watching Chuck Adams. I just got back from South Texas a couple of years ago with the oryx, and we'll talk about this on another episode, but, the best bow hunt you'll ever do in your life is Barbary sheep in South Texas or New Mexico. There's nothing better than that. And so that's where all of that stems from. And, those hunts are so different that, the strategy with whitetail is so different than hunting, say, a scimitar oryx or Barbary sheep, that it's just 180 degrees. So, but anyway, so that's kind of what started it. Then I met a guy that I worked with, and I hope he listens to this. I'm going to send it to you. He pushed me. Everybody that, whether in any profession, you have to have someone who pushes you, who makes you compete, who you have to live up to. And that guy's name was Fred Jones. Fred, when I worked in the oil and gas industry, he was a hunter as well, and he really knew his stuff, and you knew it. And so he forced me to level up too. And so we pushed each other. And so that's when the drive to truly understand the when, where's, why's, and how's started for me. And that would have been around age 19, 20, roughly. That's when I decided, hey, if you really want to do this passionately, number one, you have to be around other people who will make you level up. And I went all in on whitetail at that time. And of course, I'm kind of a follower of the old guys like Dick Idle. And I actually got an opportunity to speak with one of my heroes too, Dr. Dave Samuel. I spoke at the Bowhunters Association with him a couple of years ago. Dr. Dave Samuel was the editor of Bow Hunting Magazine for years, and had an opportunity to sit with him, and he's a legend in the sport. He and Fred Bear and Jack Frost were the three men most responsible for legalizing bow hunting in Africa. And these guys should be on the Mount Rushmore of bow hunting. And so having that opportunity to meet Dr. Samuel, also very inspiring. I never thought I'd ever get that opportunity, to do something like that. And he came in and as I was speaking, I was doing something, I think a DIY elk seminar, if I'm not mistaken. And he came in and sat down in the front row. I've spoke to thousands of people. I've never been so nervous in my life. It was just like I was doing a college, 101 speech class out over here in front of, the cheerleading team or something. I was so nervous, So, but anyway, but that's how I got started, getting me to the point where I truly knew there was a science behind this. I knew that it was more than just a wives' tale game. I knew there was something to the wives' tales, but I knew that there was some science behind this. And so those were kind of the catalysts of it. So like my family, they're not trophy hunters at all. If a 6-point buck comes by my dad today, it's shot. Count on it. So you may as well just call one off for him. But
awesome.
Anyway,
that's awesome. So that gets us, that gets a little bit of a tidbit to our viewers, but there's something that really resonates with me in that. And it's, it took me a while as a young boy. It took me a while to really even grasp that there is more to it than just luck, cause in my era here, and it's funny, now I'm fortunate to consider guys like Ben Rising friends and some of the juries and Jeff Lindsay and guys that I watched in my upbringing. For a while, just thought they got lucky. Like, how people say that, like, oh, I just thought, gosh, they are just the luckiest guys. And it's just like that old saying that when when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And something has to go off in your mind. And generally, if you're a whitetail hunter or just a bow hunter or a hunter in general, you've been in your tree stand or your ground blind. There's those days you get mad enough and frustrated enough where you finally say, look, there's got to be more to this than what I'm doing, because obviously what I'm doing is not working. I'm not stacking, the blocks here. And when you get mad enough and frustrated enough, like the teacher will start to appear. And Bryan knows, for he and I, that's how our relationship really was bolstered. Was I got really sick of just not getting the results I was after, spending the amount of time that I was spending, but not getting the results. It really starts to weigh on you, especially when you start to grow up and have kids and have family and responsibilities and things that when you're 19, it's not that big a deal. If you go and hunt deer 7 days a week, it's not that big a deal. When you're 24 with a 2-year-old and a job and a wife, it is a big deal. And so it's important, like, we're digressing here a little bit, but it's important to make the most of your time. And that is when it starts to click for you of, I have to learn how to make the most of my time. Just sitting in a tree or just being in a blind or just wherever you're at and thinking, I just, the people that say you just got to be in the right place at the right time. Yeah, I'll give you that some. But you have to know where to find the right place, and you have to know when to be there.
Right.
It's not as simple as people say. So, all right, we're midstream. Here's one last thing I want to talk. Give me and the viewers and listeners here just what's the 60-second sizzler reel to why Ohio? Because you moved to Ohio, and so did I. I followed in your footsteps. Why'd you do it?
I think Ohio is. I don't know.
I'm so putting him on the spot.
Yeah,
I love.
I didn't get the list of questions here, Val.
This is the this is the surprise alert. But why Ohio? What comes to mind?
I think that Ohio, if you are a whitetail enthusiast, I think Ohio as a whole is where it's at. And
maybe let me frame this better, Bryan. Not just why Ohio, but if the listener chooses to be and Bryan is one of the most intentional people I know with, if you're going to chase your dream, you're going to mean it, or you're going to try and be intentional with the path you want to create, you have to take action. Like, you have to go do it. We both love West Virginia. We do. It's a beautiful state. There's just not a lot of economic drivers. And to me, what I saw was just can you kill big deer in West Virginia? 100%. Yeah, we're going to bring some people in here like Mr. Dave Miller who do it every year. Can you do it? Yes. But I felt the strain of, if I'm going to get out of my comfort zone, I have to get out of my comfort zone. So anyway, why, and it doesn't just have to be Ohio. If there's a listener here saying, hey, I'm teetering with this thought, or I'm really toiling with this idea, why did you you made a pretty big move in your life that I know about, which was, what was this, probably a decade ago?
I guess, probably coming up on pretty close to 10 years now. So For me, moving here to Central Ohio boiled down to a few things. I think God gives us a limited time on earth, and I think that if you're going to chase your dreams, don't be a talker, be a doer.
Yeah.
And when I pass, I hope that people can say a few things, and we don't have to go through all of them, but I hope that they will say this: he didn't just talk. Uh, you know, there's an old saying that says, pictures don't lie, people do. Um, well, you can see the pictures of me above the timberline in the Rockies. You can see the pictures of me, packing mule deer out on my back in the plains, and you can see me behind the 200 incher in Ohio. And I just felt like for me, Ohio had the most to offer in this life, and I think God gave us this life, and I think He gave it to us to live abundantly. He told us that, and this is where my abundance, I think, for now, for this portion of my life, I think this is where it's at,
Yeah.
and the hunting here is great. The people have treated me really, really, really good. I'm a avid muskie fisherman and guide and outfitter here in Ohio, and we'll talk about that later. But and the economic opportunity is really, really good here, really, really good here, and so
And
yeah,
that
and I
drives
think
everything, I mean
it
that
does. It really does. It drives everything.
people
It
can
does.
ignore it, but it drives
Yeah,
everything you do. It
yeah,
drives
and
where
I
you live and
love.
everything.
Yes, absolutely. As you well know, and anyone that knows me well, I'm into a little bit of everything, and and so I don't mind to try anything once. And so I've got another business that'll start here this summer, and this was just the best for me, and my dreams and what I wanted to do,
Yep.
and
Yep.
so and fortunately, my both of my sons actually followed me here,
And I
and
think
I
they're
have a
doing well
daughter.
too. I mean, I can say
Oh
that.
yeah,
I
yeah,
know them
yeah,
both. I
yeah.
think they're
They're
doing
doing
well.
well.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ohio was the right place for me, and that's why.
Yep. Yeah. So it's just crazy. Like I'm 2 years into Ohio, and it was a really,
Yeah.
really big life change for me. Not just a career move, but a family move, like an entire ecosystem,
Right.
alteration. And I know it was for Brian as well. I get to watch that kind of vicariously.
Yeah.
But what I got to see as well is Brian had already reaped the benefits of having killed a lot of big deer in Ohio. He'd already reaped the benefits of that and in multiple other states. It's just different when you can go and do it within 30 minutes of your home. When you can build a
Right.
nucleus and a home base and you can go do that. Side note, if you're listening to this, Ohio is actually not taking any more residents. So sorry, this has all been
Yeah.
for fun here,
Yeah.
but no, real talk. Yeah, I would echo a lot of the things he said. So I cannot wait. What we're going to do, I just wanted you guys to hear a tidbit there. I wanted to tease you enough to know you're going to have to come back to listen to some of the stories and some of the things that Brian's going to be able to tell. There are so many things deeply entrenched in hunting and being, and for me, what he talks about these oryx deer. I've never heard of her is all I'll say. Maybe that'll change in the future. I'm just no Jim Shockey chaser, but he kills really big whitetails every year. He knows how they think. He knows how they work. He knows how to get on them. And I'm going to say this openly there's a bunch of guys that are not going to like that. I'm going to say this because it's going to hurt their feelings. But Brian is the cheat sheet for a bunch of dudes every fall. And there's a bunch of dudes who won't admit it. I know a bunch of them, but guess what, folks? Brian is my cheat sheet. And most of what I've learned in the last 5 years probably is from him. Exponentially, I'll say this, and we're going to jump right into why you should or should not buy a piece of land, analyzing it from your lens. But just in the last year, and I know he knows I'm going to say this, I've learned so much in my hunting journey because I have been as intentional with learning from him as I've ever been, and I'm able to apply these things. And there's a statement he made that I just still feel is so far away from me, but I'm getting to where I can start to grasp how to get there. He keeps saying, Tyler, one day you'll just get it with whitetails. They'll just click. It's just going to click, and like you're just going to understand it. And when he would first say that, it was like, gosh, I don't even know what hemisphere that is. I don't even know how you start that. And after this year, I'm really proud of myself because I worked incredibly hard. It's one of the most enduring seasons I've had, but he was always the guy to kind of tell me what the next move was or encourage me to the next move. I would take the action. Then I'd go back to the teacher. Hey, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I saw. And I was successful. It was a grind. I was successful in the 9th inning, but I learned, and he kept saying it, you will look back on this year and you will take things from this year that will mold every year forward. And so when we talk about the guys that just get lucky and the guys who get it done, no matter if there's a drought or if there's a storm or if there's EHD or if there's good years or bad years, and that's Bryan, those are the guys that don't get lucky. They get good and they figure it out. So anyways, there's just so much wealth that he can provide. And that's why when we are about to dive deep into analyzing what property, why to buy a piece or why not to buy a piece or the things that Bryan would tell you to look at, I want you to know that he's not blowing smoke. He intimately knows what he's talking about. He's already helped me in several purchases. And I think if I have my notes correctly, I'm going to get roasted not once, but twice on the examples that we're going to use here. So let's dive right in. Thank you for sticking with us. If you've been here this whole time, I'm telling you, there's few realtors, outdoorsmen, realtors, or whomever you're trusting right now. There's few that I would say will be able to teach you what he's going to teach you in this next little bit. So let's jump into why you should or should not buy that piece of dirt. What do you look for, Bryan? Let's go.
Well, I think the best way to illustrate this, thank you for those comments,
Sure,
by the way, but the best way to illustrate this is probably through example.
Sure.
And
yeah.
So if I can tell this from my perspective,
100%.
I'd like to just jump right in and to those two examples, if you don't mind. So
yeah. But frame this. We've been at 10,000 foot. Frame this for our listener that you're going to dive into, because it can be daunting. It can be daunting when someone says, like me, that says, hey, I want to buy some land. Well, you can get on land.com now and you can see 200 farms in a 4-county radius. And quickly you can be like, I don't know what I'm looking for. They look juicy and good, or they look great. Yeah. And you can have no idea what would set one apart from the other. So do this, Bryan. I've taken notes on 3 kind of cliff notes here. We're going to dive into some purchase price topics, right? Mm-hmm. And thoughts on purchase price. Yeah. And we're going to talk about the idea of getting it right the first time.
Right.
And I'll say it this way, the buy once, cry once. You've heard that statement, and how to get it right the first time. And then we're going to last talk about, let's say it's time to exit on that property and you decide to sell it, and how to market that piece to the right, I will call it the right avatar of buyer, or let it be you who is the buyer right now. You're the buyer. Hey, I'm looking for land. What are they looking for in someone who's actually marketing the right piece to them? Correct?
Right.
Got it.
Yeah. And those, and you just covered it there. I apologize. I'm having a little trouble with my earpiece here, but the example that I would like to use first is the piece of property in Muskingum County that you and I had kind of went back and forth about, that had been on the market for a little while. So
we're going to dive right in. So let me give the 30-second version here. This is a property that we then did sell. This is he's going to talk about a property that we sold in Legacy Acres Land Company single-handedly. Bryan brought this to me, and he's going to be too nice and not tell you. I didn't want to buy it.
Correct.
It was on the market, and I thought, gosh, it's already on the market. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm pretty allergic to anything that's already been on the market, because it makes it harder to sell sometimes if you don't reposition it. So I told him, I don't really want to do this because it's already on the market, and I don't love that. We'd have to go and make a lot of changes. So anyway, we're going to talk about, and this is, please, if you're listening to this and you try to snake what we're going to do in the future by trying to get it into our data world, we will find you. But for the sake of valuable information, we've got to unpack a deal. This deal has already transacted. And Bryan, remember, this deal's on the market now that can be bought again. If the listener's ears are tickled enough,
Yeah.
The guy who bought this farm, for whatever reason, decides to sell. I don't have any clue why. I have no first-hand knowledge. But we're going to talk about this farm in deep dive. So there's the framing.
I'll try to make it a little
thing.
vague, I guess, with names. I'll exclude names and things of
I
that
don't care.
nature.
Let's
But
go for it.
Tyler says
I don't.
So there was a piece of property that Tyler had came to me and said, "Hey, listen, looking for a piece over in here." And I happened to drive by one time, and I saw a piece of property that was for sale that had been on the market for like a year and a half. Immediately, when I saw that property, I began to back out, take a look at the big picture, and realized, oh goodness, we are sitting on a gem here that no one is seeing. And
why is no one seeing? Tell them that. Why do you think no one's seeing?
Well, it comes back to I want to kind of rag on you a bit here
That's
for turning it down.
Yeah. Well,
so
go ahead.
So I take it to Tyler and I'm like, "Hey Tyler, listen, I'm telling you." And I think the bet was a month, if I'm not mistaken. But so you can stop me if this isn't exactly right. But so I take it to Tyler and I say, "Tyler, we need to buy this property here. I'm telling you, buddy, you need to buy it. This property, marketed properly, in the right hands, this is worth well above market value because of the timbering operation that had happened on the property. It had been on the market. Hundreds, if not thousands of eyes had seen it already. And it was actually valued pretty good, maybe even a tick above what you would call at the time, a price per acre was probably a little better than it probably should have been, given the fact that it really had very little marketable timber. But for recreational property, it was premium. And I'll explain why here just in a bit. So I rushed to Tyler. I say, "Hey, listen, Tyler, you need to buy this. This property will sell. You're going to make $150,000 on this thing, and you're going to make that within a month. I'm telling you, this property will sell within a month." And so he's like, well, okay. I mean, I see the property, but you're going to have to sell me better than that. And so that's when the debates began. And so he basically gave me a little leeway to negotiate with the landowner, and I was taking the calls late at night, and I think actually you were too. But I met with the landowner, and finally, I said, "Look, buddy, I'm telling you, you got to trust me on this. Trust me on this. This property is going to produce 60 class bucks consistently, year in and year out. And every now and then you're gonna get that 180 plus and have a legitimate shot at that magic number. Pretty, And he's like, "What?" If you're seeing that, I mean, this place has been on the market forever. So, make a long story short, he actually bought it.
Well, and I think we should throw the other guy under the bus that sold it to me. I mean, I think it'd be fun. But,
no, I can't.
Well, he's going to listen to this, and we have a dear friend, and he bought it. So here's what's my version as well. He bought it on owner financing, okay?
Yeah.
He bought it on owner financing, and he came to me before he bought it and said, and this is why I was so skeptical. He said he was looking at a farm of mine, and this is ironic because I'm buying this farm back that he looked at. It's so good, and I always told him he was an idiot for not buying it. But he finds this farm, calls me, and he's like, they're offering it on owner financing, and they only want 10% down. And the whole time I'm like, none of this adds up if this is a good property. All of this points to if they're owner financing a property in a banger area, it's probably smoked, or it's a joke, or it's a piece of crap property. Let's just say it openly, and that's what I thought. I thought there's got to be something going on here. So, he buys it, right? He buys it, and then, oh man, we're just gonna throw him under the bus a little bit. I can't wait till he listens. Well, he gets, and I'm gonna be honest, real about this because we're all still friends here. He and we're all still friends. He felt like he bit off more than he could chew, and he felt that way quicker than he was even able to see the fruits of this property and what it could do. So not only does he owner finance a farm, And then Brian comes to me and he's like, so-and-so wants out of the farm. Let's talk about this here. Well, I'm like, I don't want somebody's sloppy seconds, and no one should have to own or finance a farm. If it's good, it's going to sell cash. Like, I was really confused, of the positioning of this farm. Why? So fast forward, we get the guy out of the deal. I buy it from him. I'm leaning on Mr. Tanner here, who let's back up. To be fair, Brian intimately knows the area. If there's anyone that has data, he had it. So, yeah, I buy the farm on owner financing. It's
Right.
It's used goods.
Right.
And we bail out our buddy,
Right.
by buying the farm. So
Right.
that frames this experiment. We already have bought a farm in my mind that is the redhead stepchild that was owner financed by somebody who we know. He got to where he said, I don't want to do this. It's too far from home. We bail him out. And Brian's the whole time promising this farm's going to be the golden pony, my man. All right, now,
it wasn't just the golden pony. It was, and I'm selling Tyler too that, hey, listen, buddy, you're not going to believe this, but I don't want you to do much on this place. I don't want you to come in and do a whole lot. Look, put a little fencing down, at the road if you want to, pretty it up, make it nice. Don't bother it. And he's like, so you're telling me this has been on the market a year and a half. You don't have to touch it. And you think a fence is going to make me $150,000? Is that what you're telling me? You're trying to sell me that, right? And you can owner finance this place? Are you out of it? I know what he's thinking. He's thinking, dude, you're out of your mind. I'm telling you, Tyler, this will make you $150,000 because of the principle that we kind of touched on earlier. It wasn't the 108 acres or 9 acres or whatever it was. It was what that 109 pulled from. So I knew when I looked at this area that this farm was going to pull 600 acres because there were 3 separate drains that all led to the low gap in the center of this farm. This farm also had tremendous bedding, and it had not just one main thicket. Now, there's a difference between, and I'll try not to, you stop me if I get too meticulous here, but quality bedding is better if you have 4 or 5 smaller thickets on a farm than one large thicket.
Why?
Well, you don't have that competition during the peak of the breeding at that time. And it allows the deer to be able to bed differently on different winds. Deer will actually change up how they enter and exit food plots or things based upon wind. And depending on how far it is from the bedding, they'll sometimes actually begin at bedding. Well, I just so happened to know by looking at the topo map, you had 2 significant barriers. You had a road at the south and a road at the north. Those were significant barriers, and the food was all to the east and the west. So I knew that western portion of the farm was going to be the primary travel route in November, especially toward the end of October, really. But as the breeding season began, I knew those deer would come from that direction or travel into that most of the time. So, I mean, the farm just laid out perfect to deer hunt, and to not only that, but deer that were wanting to go from point A to point B, the quickest and easiest way for them to get there was through that main low gap. They're like us. They're going to go the easiest way possible when they can. And the topography was perfect, and I just knew the cameras would light up there. Now, having said that, if you go in there in October, you're not gonna probably have a lot of resident deer on that place. And the cameras bared that out. I think he had one 8-point there that was pretty good in October. I think it was 150 class 8. But I told him at that time, don't shoot that deer. relax. You don't know what's coming. Trust me, it's coming. And sure enough, again, the camera started lighting up there toward the end of October, and by mid-November, it was just a buck fest in there, and there was enough browse on the farm that late season was really good there too. Really, really good there. Those bucks actually, would come and stay late season for 7 to 10 days or so in some of those thickets that had the really good browse. And, the cameras bore that out as well. So but
unpack this, pretend, this is the unfortunate part of the world we're in today as hunters is we don't govern ourselves real well. And I know that you guys would love to have Bryan deep dive on a map if you're watching this video on YouTube.
Yeah.
And we can do that. I mean, he could do that, but here's the reality is most of you would try to snake the farm, and this one's available right now. It's active.
Right.
As of the time of this recording, it hasn't sold. But let's unpack this for just a listener in their car.
Yeah.
You're talking topography right now. You're talking all topography. You identified topography on the map and said, hey, what I would say, these are Tannerisms, I would call them, but there are some topography, pinches here. There are some topography keynote areas. There's a better word for it, but hacks. There's some hacks in the topography that I think we can exploit on this property. Why? How does someone even come up with that? What are you looking for?
Yeah. So deer, mature deer are very cautious. And again, I'm not trying to oversimplify. I'm just trying to state the obvious too, and you've heard me say this many times, never overlook the obvious. Don't try to get too cute with your hunting methods, things of that. Don't overlook the obvious. You had a road and a rock wall, if you remember. Now, when I look at that topo map and I see those lines so close together that I can't distinguish between the lines, that's either straight up and down or that's a rock cliff in an old mining area. Well, I happen to know that in Muskingum County, Ohio, this is an old mining area.
Yep.
That was probably part of an old mine.
Yep.
So if that's the case, then that's a rock face. Well, sure enough, all I had to do was drive by the road to see that. Yep. So now I have a rock wall that's impossible for those deer to travel through, and a low gap, a quarter of a mile on out the ridge, if you will. So I have a rock wall and a main road with houses, dogs, and all that other human activity, or a low gap to get from hollow A to hollow B.
Yep.
Well, where is he going to go through? Why would he go to the high point? Why would he come out? Is he going to come out and walk up the main road? Of course not. So you can't shoot him at night. So if you can't shoot him at night, then in the daytime, how's he going to travel? He's going to travel near that low gap somewhere. And big deer leave big sign most of the time. And he'll tell you, if you do your homework, he'll tell you where he's traveling most of the time. And so, but having said all of that, the price on that 109 acres was priced pretty reasonably for 109 acres. But that wasn't the value in that. That property hunted like it was 500 acres. You had so if you have 109 acres that would have laid differently, and you come in a single year and you shoot 2 of your big mature deer, you may not have a deer next year.
Yep.
That's a property that you're going to have mature deer on every single year without question. Taking a couple of bucks off a property like that every year, you're not phasing it. So that property had big value to someone who maybe had a couple of buddies that they wanted to hunt with, or, you have a larger family. You got 2 sons who are, 18, 20, 22 years old. That property, really was worth 3 times that as far as the usage and the number of deer you could take. And not only that, the investment you had to put in it was very minuscule.
Yep.
You didn't have to go back and plant food plots year in and year out and things of that nature. So the value was really through the roof. And to make a long story short, we wound up making the 150 G off that.
He's
and
wrong.
I think
it was
sold
143. So
143 in 3 weeks.
Pathetic.
So and then I think probably my better one that I have to kind of grind in a little bit here.
Well, and I want to pause you 1 second here.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
So these folks know this property could have sold by the time of this recording being
Yeah,
aired.
yeah.
But the gentleman that bought the farm from me, he hunted it 1 year. I don't know if it's just too much of a time travel distance for him from home, but the farm is actively listed for sale. So I'll drop the link to this property in the show notes. I'll put it in the comments if this is on live feed. But it is a property that is actively listed. So all the benefits that Bryan could tell you about, he not only lives, incredibly close to this farm, but he could give you live, real-time, new, updated benefits. Something that I would love for you guys to be able to see, if you go look at my listing of this farm, and it's on our website under sold farms, there's a deer came onto the farm late when I had it, which would have been late 23, early 24. Mm-hmm. It would have been. There was a big deer that showed up on the farm right when we were getting ready to start all of our improvements. And that deer, we knew if that deer progressed, he'd be a giant. And he already was a shooter the year prior. Well, he's on the new listing pictures with the guy.
Yeah.
Even bigger. So I'll drop that in the show notes. Maybe it's sold by now. Maybe it hasn't. Maybe he owes us 5% commission if we sell it for him.
Yeah,
but,
there you go.
Bryan, 0 to 10, what would you rate that farm for big buck huntability?
It's right there at a 9.5. For me, got to tell you that's about as good as it gets. It really is. If you like hunting the rut, now if you're an early season hunter, that's probably not the place for you.
Correct.
But and that's the only reason I'm not giving it a 10, quite frankly, and giving it a 9 is because the October hunting could be poor if you don't have a resident deer that tickles your fancy. But boy, in November, it makes up for it. And December and January, it really makes up for it. And again, the pictures have borne that out. And so, but it's one that, again, we'll touch on it maybe this podcast or the next, but it's one that you could easily mess up too if you weren't careful.
Yep.
Very easily. This is a property that you could destroy the value in it if you really didn't know what you were doing there. So,
so we're going to jump over to this next one, but I want to make sure that we're covering the cliff notes here of your purchase price, getting it right the first time, and then kind of how to market that piece to the right people.
Yeah,
so
and I think
you want to recap those all together, or do you want to recap that farm?
Yeah, so let me recap this one here. So the market price here was a reasonably fair market price per acre, and people just didn't see the value of it, and
I don't care. Let's just go into the numbers. I don't even care to.
Yeah, so it was listed at 370,000, and I think it was 109. I think it was 109,000, and
109 acres
or 109 acres,
yep.
And I think it sold for 550.
Yep.
Yeah, 555. And I'm not sure exactly how much you invested in it, but I don't think it was a ton.
No, I think maybe we had about 35 grand. So purchase price was $33.94 an acre. So let's just say $3,400 an acre. Yeah. Side note: there were no minerals. There were no minerals in that transaction. So I want to make sure we're being extremely transparent. The purchase price was $379.9. I wanted to say $379.9, and divided by the 109, which is $34.85 an acre. So, and then it sold for $555. Which was $5,091 an acre. So it was a $1,500 an acre hit almost. So, Yeah, that's where you come up with the math. We did have about 35,000 in improvements in gates, gravel,
Right.
road systems, food plot dozing, those kinds of things. But really, a really good hit. But I'll tell you this much, and all this is public record, so it's not like we're talking about anything that you guys can't go see. He's got it marketed at like 621 now, and I'll tell you, just for anyone, because this might tie into your next statement: buy once, cry once. But that's not out of line. It's not out of line with what things are selling for in the market in that area. Is that top of the market? Yes. But here's the thing that I've seen about land, and I only want to side plug this really quickly. I want to go to this next example. But there was a really, really wealthy guy that I talked to a year and a half ago that was interested in buying a farm from me. And I could quickly tell when I was talking to this guy on the phone that he's somebody I really wanted to stay connected with. He wasn't just a fly-by-night. He was a really, really knowledgeable guy. Really successful investor, well diversified. Land was not his only play. Really, really avid hunter. So I could tell, we'd resonate on a lot of things. Here's what he said, and I want the listeners to deeply hear this. He said, in his experience, and the guy owns land in 5 states, and he's a pilot, and he flies himself to his land, and he is very independently wealthy and lives in Boca Raton, Florida. Not doing bad. He said in his experience, land has appreciated 7 to 10% a year, every year, without fail, for every piece of land he's ever owned. And I've done a lot of real estate investing. If you followed my career, I've done a lot, done a little bit of a lot. And it's really hard to be able to say that you can buy something and do nothing, and it'll appreciate 7 to 10% a year. So I bring that up because when you talk about 621, I think it's 621 as of today. That's, let's just call that whatever that is. I'm not great at the math here, but divide that into 109. Let's just do it. 621, he's now asking, some of our smarter viewers already have it figured out, by 109. It's 6,000 an acre, just under 6,000 an acre. So what? It's not out of line, and tie this into your buy once, cry once, Brian.
Right. So, it's
5,700 an acre, 5,697.
Yeah. Well, okay, so divide that by, let's just say 500 acres now. Divide that price by that, because that's how big it's hunting. Yeah. That's what you're really pulling from. And now, and if you want to go really deep on that, if you take a look at, yeah, because here's the reality: the acreage that directly butts against it is essentially all but unhuntable. Yeah. It is a huge drains, points, wind swirls that you couldn't possibly overcome. It's essentially a sanctuary. So, that 109.
There was a big lake, I remember. You're talking about.
Yes,
there's a neighbor.
Correct.
Yeah, there's a big water source that essentially keeps him from being able to hunt a huge portion of his farm that would only be accessible by this one.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it funnels those deer on that farm, to that northern section beautifully. So,
you're talking about access here. You're talking about a purchase price. We're talking about getting that right on the first time. But let's go to your next example. And I want to make sure, because I know we're covering a lot, and for a listener who's not like deeply entrenched in what we're talking about, we might lose you for a minute. Let's make sure to recap these together to some general takeaways of how to empower someone when they're looking at a piece of land to not feel so, daunting of a task to what lens am I using to analyze whether this is a go or no go, to fit your,
right.
And that list is different for every listener. Your go or no go, it may be a much lower, bar that you're looking to set than what we're talking about here, which is okay.
Right.
But we're going to go to this next one. I believe.
Yeah.
We're going to the next project, or you got more thoughts?
No. I think this next one is maybe my favorite, actually. So we go to the next property here, or
sure.
will you?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, we're
so
good. We're just this one. He already knows everybody. This one, it actually it should hurt me worse than it does. But the teacher here taught a great lesson, and I'm just going to let you go ahead and tell it in your version here.
So a few years back, 4 or 5 years back, I got a call. I was in Montana. Mary and I had purchased a piece of property in Montana, and we were working it that summer. And I got a call from Tyler, and he says, "Hey," he said, I have a piece of property. Or actually, he had a lease in Athens County, and near, actually not far probably from this 50 acres you're talking about. And by the way, just a little FYI, with this 50 acres that you have listed, that 681 corridor has been really good to me over the years, as you well know, but that's another story. But so anyway, and he says, if you want this lease, he said, I guess the guys who had it like 3 or 4 years prior, uh, they decided that they didn't want it or whatever. And he said, if you want it, he said, I'm not going to hunt it. He said, it's kind of where I started. It was his first Ohio lease or something. And I said, where's it at? And he said, just outside of this little town in Tupper's Plains, and I said, yeah, I'll take it. So I think Mary actually had PayPal'd you the money, I think like that day or the next morning or whatever, and so I'm in Montana. And so our bow season in Ohio that year opened up like the 25th or so of September. I don't remember the exact date, but third week in September. And we didn't get back till like the end of August. It was like August 30th or so. And I talked to Tyler, and I said, AJ's wanting to hunt this year, and we'll get him down there and let him hunt with basically no reservations. But when I saw that 89 acres, there was a large timber company that had like 1,000 acres. Is that right?
I think the tract north that they owned was like 200, but the tracts around it were some ginormous.
Huge tracts. Yeah, and so. And it just so happened that this 89 acres set where these drains met. So the entire drainage system, which would have been probably 300 to 400 to the left, I could see a crop field on Google Earth. I could tell that there was some hay fields to the right.
Yep.
I knew there would probably be some clover in there. Probably some soybeans to the left. Everything funneled right down to this particular creek drain, and that 89 acres encompassed that. And the way the wind was blowing there oriented beautifully for an early season hunt. And again, not to get too deep into the woods there, but I said, yeah, we'll take that. So we took it, and the opening day of season that year. Let me go back. You guys had it for like 13 years prior, right?
No,
and it went through some hands.
It did. It went through some hands, and the only part you missed, because I want to make sure and roast these guys. Hopefully this will get to the right ears. But I actually got the lease from a friend of a friend, and he's two of the guys that had this prior to me. I'm not going to mention who they are yet. You know them, but I hope at least one of the two is going to come on to the podcast. So they had tons of history with the property. It was just kind of a hand-me-down. I had just kept leasing it just to maintain control. But the part that Bryan, he didn't realize this, or I think I told him at that time, but I want to make sure this is said to our viewers after you tell the final part of the story. The guys that were leasing this were from North Carolina, and they always paid me late. And it drove me nuts. And I would tell them, in January, like, it's not about the money for me. It's the principle that you just always pay me late. The lease is due, whenever it was, March, April, May, whatever it was due. And they would never give me the money, until the day it was due. And I just got annoyed with them. So I told them, hey, we're not going to do this again. It's not going to happen that way. And if you don't get me paid in time, I'm leasing it outside of you. And you will never guess what happened. They didn't get me paid in time. So I was as much, mad about the situation. Right. And come to find out, they kind of knew of this deer that we will talk about, and it's quite obvious they weren't able to get him killed. So I just wanted to make sure that was added in there. I'm still friends with the North Carolina guy. Good dude. Maybe he's learned his lesson. And if you are a listener or viewer, pay your leases. Pay your leases on time or you'll lose 200s. Anyway, let's go.
Thank you, North Carolina guy. I appreciate it. Oh, you won. So I'd got it. I'd gotten there in August, and I had went up there, and please forgive me. There's more than one way to skin a cat, so I hope I don't offend the North Carolina fella here or whoever. But I had noticed where they had placed some of the stands at, and some of them were probably 30 yards off, and the one that was up top was probably less than that, probably 25 yards made all the difference in success and failure where that stand was placed at. And they had placed one of the feeders down low that was actually keeping the deer nocturnal, which is why they couldn't see it in the daytime. And again, that falls back into just the smallest things can really make the difference in success and failure. And so I got there, I put out a little bit of groceries just to kind of take a quick inventory, and 1st of September, and got a picture of an absolute giant 8-point, really good deer. Mary saw him immediately and said, yep, that's the one I want, and he was probably 22 to 23 inches inside. He was a really, really good 8. And but again, he was in the middle of the night. I knew by the times he had showed up to the camera that we weren't on his side of the hill. And so I made a little adjustment based on what I felt like the obvious move would be. And sure enough, the very first deer that showed up there was a 200-incher. And I named him Walter after my old neighbor in Ripley, West Virginia. Walter Booker, who's passed away, good friend of mine, a great man, World War II veteran, and one of the last actually. But I named him Walter because I knew he was a really, really old buck, and I knew he was getting close to the 200-inch mark, and I felt like he would maybe hit it, but I wasn't sure, and but I knew I had to kill him early because he had 20 scoreable points, had 10 on each side, he had daggers going everywhere on him, and I didn't want to take a chance of him breaking off. So I made an early season plan, and Tyler knows this area. He knows this farm well. I actually shot this deer on the opening day of season in 80-degree weather in the bottom of a drain. And so there are occasions and times that you can get away with that, but all the things have to line up. And I had to drag him off his original path to the bean field because, it was close to the property line there. And so anyway, to make a long story short, we wound up having 6 deer on that 89 acres that were over 150 inches. 4 of those deer were over 160, and one was a 200-incher. And Mary shot a really nice deer that we call Can't Get Right after Bernie Mac's role in a movie. But
I always wondered that.
Actually, you and Alec came and help us drag that out.
Yep.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken.
I had forgotten that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I wish we'll put these in the comments if I can. You guys are gonna have to give me. Brian will be happy to share a picture of this deer, but this deer is just absolutely. I don't know. Is this deer behind you? Can you put your camera?
He is right. I don't know which one he. Yep. Yeah, he's that one there.
You go.
That's him right there.
So yeah, a freak of nature. When he sent me a picture that he got of this deer. And I told him, yep, I never had anything like that. But, gosh, there's just so many nuances here that he could break down of the hunt. But we have to promise on this podcast, we're not going to talk about the hunt. We're going to talk about, okay, obviously you were successful on this property, but what were the things about this property? You hinted at it earlier that this property was essentially a big drain system of all the properties around it.
Right.
How does someone see that? Like, unpack this from the 10,000-foot view.
So I think, so how does someone see that? Well, Tyler, that's, and I say this with the utmost of humility, but that takes years of experience. And I think there's where you kind of have to have a team around you and have people and I'll give you a lot of credit, Tyler. You have, and again, I know this podcast isn't for you listeners out there. Tyler did not want to make this podcast about him, and but I think it's important here to share this. You have to have people around you that can do things that maybe you can't.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
or teach you things so that you can develop a skill as well. And I've had that in my life with a lot of people were able to teach me a lot of things, but um you know I think that there's where could the average person spot it? No. Is it easy to learn? No. This property over here would not have been on the market a year and a half had it been an easy skill to be able to pick up and learn.
Sure.
And so same thing with that 89 acres. The topography was perfect. The bedding was in the right place. The wind direction, the way it oriented was correct. You only had one entrance to this place. It just so happened that the wind direction, primarily in the north, or excuse me, in November, actually worked out pretty well.
It did.
October was when you had the problem.
Yeah, I
But
remember hunting it in the same thing. We had some good hunts on it back years prior to you having it.
yeah,
That if you had high pressure,
yeah,
you could be low on that farm, deep,
yeah,
and be fine.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I do remember that.
So, and there's just a lot of factors, and building that team around you, or being able to call someone and say, "Hey, what do you think of this?" If you were a recreational hunter, what do you think of this property? And
Yep.
and you build relationships that way, and once you see success, just like consultants out there, you could have. I heard Ben talk about this on you guys were talking about it on social media one time. You can tell me all you want to. Your wall tells me what you are.
Yep.
And the consistency of that wall means something. And so, you got to find people like that to be able to find those little niches. And you've done a good job at putting a team around you to kind of pull from everybody's strengths. And, but how do you know how do you know?
All that.
I don't know how to say it. I don't know how to quantify it other than I've deer hunted enough to know what the deer will do, and I know what they should do. And when I saw that there, I just felt like that this is how they would travel during certain times of the year based on food, based on bedding, based on wind.
Yep.
And I just felt like that was a home run. And once I saw, the thing that gave me pause was the people who had it prior hadn't had real good success there. I think there was only like one deer taken off there in the last 10 years,
Yep.
And
I never killed it.
No,
I killed one there, but yeah, it wasn't noteworthy.
Yeah, and so just some small adjustments to stay in locations, and I can't tell you how many we passed there, and so
well, and
Mary killed that one. And
you're giving just too little of credit to. Of course, yes, it takes time to understand and look at a map and be able to digest it, but the thing that I'm hearing you say that I think is digestible for anyone at any level in listening to this conversation is you looked at the properties all around it.
Correct.
How do the properties around it talk to it? And it's easy to just look at a farm and say, "Oh, it's 80 acres." And let's use an example. Let's be honest here. I have some really good realtor friends that are land guys, really good friends. But lots of times they don't give you, when you look at a piece of property with a listing, they just show you 72 pictures of beautiful pictures of that farm. You've got to then go find the farm on Onyx Hunt Maps or somewhere where you can see the parcel to then see how do the other parcels talk to it. And if you don't do that, you're going to miss some of these intangibles that you're talking about that can be tangible if you zoom out.
Right.
Zoom out and see the bigger picture. How much your neighbors effect, and I've learned this the hard way. You know, when you get ready to talk about buy once, cry once, and we recap this, I've learned it the hard way. Your neighbors can make or break your success.
Yeah,
I don't care
for
how
sure.
good your property can be.
Yes.
The wrong amount of
For
dogs
sure.
or the wrong amount of chaos or the wrong amount of four-wheeler riding and motocross
Right.
racing, used to do it, but there's a place
Yep.
for it, can kill your plan. And if you can't zoom out, and lots of times, unfortunately, realtors, if they know there's teeth to a listing or they know there's negatives, they will intentionally keep that from you. By the way, not the ones I work with. The ones that I will bring on here, the ones that I have vetted, the ones that I work with won't do that. But there's a lot that will. So you've got to be able to do this due diligence yourself. And this sounds so silly, but you zoomed out.
Right. That's correct.
Zoomed out.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to zoom out. You know, those deer are not living on 20 acres. They're living on a huge, they don't know where your property line is. Even if you have a fence up, they don't know where it's at, you know? And so,
they don't care.
You know, you have to I look for significant boundaries, such as a roadway system or a river or something. That's obviously they'll cross them, but that's what I'm looking for is where's that boundary? Is it 400 acres? Is it 700 acres? Is it, you know? And so when I find the biggest significant boundary around a property, and then I'll begin to digest the little topography features in there, and then I'll take a drive as we talked about. You know, I simply drove by that 108 and I noticed that there was dogs and 3 houses there to the south of that and the high rock wall. That tells me right there that they're going to be more hesitant about crossing down there around the dogs and that high wall because they're pinned in and they don't like putting themselves in that position. So I knew that would keep the deer flow.
That. You know, you shifted that from a negative to a benefit.
Correct.
If you can position it correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can take a lot of activity and use it to your benefit, you know, and you can take a negative and turn it into a positive.
Yep.
And, but you have to understand, you know, a little bit about, you know, really what you're if you're looking for a recreational property to hunt on, you have to be able to go out and assess it 100% and then not make that big mistake that, you know, we haven't really talked about. But you know, it's easy to mess a property up too on a small acreage deal. Very easy. If you're not putting the food plots in the right place, if you're not getting your access in the right place, listen, it takes a long time for trees to grow back, you know, and so that's why it's important to get with professionals who specialize in recreational farms or who specialize in consulting or buying and selling and you know, guys like yourself or Jeremy Mills. I've heard you speak of Jeremy. I haven't had the opportunity to meet him, but I know he has a reputation in the business and other guys as well. You know, I know you work a lot with Ben Rising, or you had there for a while, and great guy. You know, obviously, and you know, these are all people that know what they're doing, and your results have shown. You know, and so.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that. So let's do this. Let's recap this here. When we're going to talk about what are the takeaways. We've used 2 properties. They're very different examples. One was a purchase that we worked together. We made improvements to the farm. We proved the model. We proved you right. Second one was a property that's a lease. It wasn't even a purchase. It was a lease. So it's, you can use the same lens to analyze something even from a permission farm. What do you think if we're looking at easily digestible takeaways? You know, my cliff notes here are purchase price, right? And can that and when I say purchase price, what comes to mind for you?
Purchase price would mean whatever that market is there at the time. If it is within the huntable. Like that 108 we talked about drew from 500 to 600 acres. So I don't mind to pay 20, 30, 40% even if it's that good more. Say if property is selling for 4,000 an acre in an area, if I could buy that 109 up there for 5,000 an acre, I'd buy it in a heartbeat. It's not going down, and so, land is as good of investment out as there is out there. So, and it's only going to get better, and goodness grief, that when you can find a property like that, and they are out there. I don't care how long it's been on the market. So don't stop looking.
Yep.
Don't stop, and just say, and rule it out because too many eyeballs have hit it.
Yep.
Now you're going to overlook some deals if you do that. And so that's kind of what I think the gist of our conversation is. Look at the big picture.
Yep.
And that's the only way you can truly value a small piece of property. And you'll find some gems out there, I think. And, you were able to get that property in the hands of a seller or a buyer who understood
Yep.
that, oh, wow, hey, this is worth more than,
Yep.
Whatever the 108 price would have been. And
I'm confident
so, yeah.
for him. I mean, this is just in a 1-year run. For whatever reason, I haven't discussed with him. I haven't talked to him about why he's selling. For whatever reason. Might be like me, and he just likes to buy and sell dirt. But there's a really good chance he's going to obviously make a good chunk of money in a year just owning a recreational hunting piece of land. So when we talk about getting it right the first time, like what comes to mind to you when you say get it right the first time? What do you mean?
Well, so let's go back to this property. Had someone bought this 108 and decided, well, I think I'm going to go up there on that beautiful flat. So there's a flat that runs essentially the entire property all the way around. And it's kind of thick in there, but it would certainly make great access to the back of the property. There's no real big elevation changes. You could put a road in there wonderfully, even a four-wheeler road in there. But you might have to take a bobcat through there. You're going to destroy your bedding area by doing that. That's the whole reason that those deer are on there and feel confident in traveling it in daylight. And that's something we didn't even touch on. That's a whole other topic. But if you were to go in on some of those big, beautiful flats and decide to plant a food plot, well, that sounds great. And they'll definitely visit it at night.
Yep.
But you can't hunt at night, And so daylight activity is what you're looking for on any property, really. But on this small property, you had the bedding, you had the browse. The deer felt comfortable in staying there.
Yep.
And Tyler's heard me say this many times, but killing big deer is exactly the way Morgan Freeman, the character that Morgan Freeman played in Shawshank Redemption when he was describing Andy Dufresne's love of geology. It's about time and pressure. And that's the recipe. And so, if you were to go in and put a road system where the topography told you to put it at, you would kill that farm. That farm would not be worth even market value because it had no valuable timber at that time. So you have to know that's part of the assessment. That's why having a good consultant is very important.
Yeah, I already had Madison Raber on here, but obviously someone like Madison's who I would recommend. I mean, it's unbelievable, and we could do another hour and a half on timber, but lots of times you can even do a select cut on a farm and pay for everything that you would be wanting to do to improve it. It's all tax-free. I mean, there's a ton of benefit.
Yeah.
But that card was taken off the table because this farm had already been select cut two owners prior to us. So card was off the table. Use it to your advantage when it's at the right stage of regrowth, which is what happened there.
Right. Correct.
So getting it right the first time, I mean, what Bryan's talking about that I've experienced firsthand is, it's easy to go look at the map and say, hey, there's some topography here that's flat, and in premium southeastern Ohio and south central Ohio, especially West Virginia, folks north and south of us here in Ohio, when you have a flat it is easy to entice yourself to say, hey, I'm going to go plant that in a food plot because it's plantable. It's a place you can
Right.
get one and you can turn some eye
Right.
candy. And I've heard Ben say this, numerous times, is that may not be what the farm needed, and you can ruin the farm by putting things in the wrong place. So not
Yeah.
only are you ruining what the success would be, which is immeasurable, right? The success of
Right.
a farm is what, let's go to the MasterCard commercial, priceless. The success is priceless. There is real cost to doing it wrong. There's cost to installing the wrong thing, and there's cost to fixing the wrong thing, and it usually comes with time
Right.
and money.
Right.
It costs you
Correct.
both,
Yeah.
in the wrong ways. And so, yeah, I can't say enough, having done multiple consulting, I've paid for multiple consultants to come, and I've been on multiple tours with you now. I just can't say enough about getting it right the first time means going in there with a comprehensive plan that supports your goals and how to accomplish that. And that
Right.
is when you'll get it right the first time, because you may have Bryan Tanner come in and say, hey, I wouldn't do anything to this farm. Here's the 4 stands I would change, or here's the funnel that I would enhance, or here's the select cut I would do over here to increase the bedding or whatever. But largely, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do this, or that. So anyways, we're neck deep into this idea of getting it right the first time. And I want to just put a bow on that, because I think we're not beating a dead horse, but I cannot stress enough, because I've experienced it firsthand, how much it costs in both time and money to get it wrong. And we are kind of, this is a nice way to say, and I'm suggesting this wholeheartedly, and I sell land for a living, would hire a consultant the first time, especially the first time you're going to buy your first dream piece of property. Ask them to give you a comprehensive plan to help you accomplish the goals you're going after. And if it's the right consultant, like someone like Bryan, who would help you actually analyze a property on the front end, it's a lot harder to get a property right when you pick the wrong property.
Right.
Am I wrong?
No, you're right. You're 100% right.
So I think obviously that goes without saying, that getting it right means making sure to rely on people that are smarter than you, that have done what you are trying to do successfully. The greatest teacher you always hear is experience, but as I always like to say, as long as it's not your own. Buy the experience of someone else's, yes, is there things that you're going to have to experience on your own in life? Some, yes. But when it comes to being taught, and when it comes to learning a skill set that someone else has already mastered, it can go a lot faster if you pick it up from someone who's already done it than learn it yourself. So, last thing is, we wanted to talk about this idea of marketing to the right audience. And I think that I would be careful, and I think you would agree, that there's both the side when you're buying a property. Are you being marketed to the right property, or is the right property being marketed to you? Does it speak to you? And then there's the other side of when you're selling. So cover the buying side. What do you think what comes to mind, Bryan, when we talk about making sure that the property is speaking the right language? Let's go, let's go primos here.
Well, I think that when you're looking to buy a piece of property there, you want to make sure that the person selling it to you is authentic in their lifestyle, and they know what they're selling to you. It would be hard for you to market me a fishing farm when I know that you don't fish. When I can see what your company is about, and I know that it's really not about that. I know that you're just parroting popular words out there. But when I can look at you and see that, hey, this young lady or this young man, they're living that life and they know what they're talking about. That means something, you know. So anytime that I would look at a piece of property, once I had a conversation with the person selling it or the people selling it, the marketing agency selling it, if I knew they weren't authentic and knew hunting like I thought that I might know it, your words didn't matter much to me at that point. So when I'm looking to buy, I'm looking to buy from people that I know is authentic in their lifestyle. And so, that's very important. Very, very, very important. If not, I wouldn't listen to much of what they had to say. Now, that doesn't mean people who don't hunt can't sell land and farms, obviously. I'm just simply saying that be careful with marketing. Marketing can get you marketed too. So,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, there's plenty of funnels out there anymore. And, this goes back to the buy once, cry once.
yeah,
You buy from the wrong person, the wrong product, you're going to get the wrong outcome. So,
right,
yeah, it's unfortunate. And I've seen people on both sides of it. And I've,
yeah,
been in the position of people asking me to bail them out when they make the wrong purchase because now they've got
right,
buyer's remorse and they can't find a way out. So
right.
it is tough. So, Brian, we've talked, we've scratched the surface to me of what you've done in the last 40 years has caused you to see, and I would say 40 plus, has caused you to see in a piece of land. And obviously that doesn't happen overnight. But what I always love empowering our listeners and viewers with is when you think of land and legacy and people that you watched create a legacy through land, and that's what I'm passionate about with this podcast is helping people actually start building legacy through buying land. It always comes from, we always think of these people that we already watched do it. And I know you've got a person in mind who I'd love to just hear you tell us when it comes to mind of, we call this who then how. Who did you watch create legacy? How did they do it? And what did you take from that you try to emulate or are trying to emulate today?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So yeah, there is a guy that jumps to mind, and I hope that I was so let me preface this by saying I haven't seen him. I haven't talked to him for probably, oh goodness, I was a West Virginia resident, so probably 11, 12, 13 years. Great guy. I mean, super good guy, salt of the earth. I'm sure he won't mind. But Jerry Spence is a guy that we were both young. So the first piece of property that I bought, how I got into the game was I was 20 or 21 years old living in Ripley, West Virginia, and Jerry was in Kentucky. And he began buying small tracts of land, literally. Subdivisions were in vogue, if you will, in the 1990s, especially the early 90s. And there was a guy in Ripley, and I hope he doesn't mind if I say his name, but his name was Luther Jones. I got a ton of respect for Luther. He really gave me a big break. He owner financed me a couple of lots in Ripley View Estates there, and I didn't know how I was going to pay for him, to be honest with you, but I did make the investment, made really good rate of return off of it. I figured out real fast what capital gains was about, but that's another story. But yeah,
Hey,
so
these
but
are the stripes we all take to
yeah,
learn.
yeah.
And by the way, folks, like Brian and I talked prior to this, and he was not going to mention. So I trust Brian, and I know that everything you're going to say about someone who you've watched create legacy,
yeah,
it's only edification to what they've done.
sure,
It's not to expose them, and it's not to be,
right,
it's not to, put them out on an island that they can't swim off of. So jumping right back in, Brian, we were talking about that, you're going to share the example of one of the people that you have watched create legacy through land. And
right,
it doesn't always have to be about land, but I think you're like me, like land is what resonates with us, with people's
right,
success and legacy they've created. So, in the sake of only edifying what these guys have done that you've watched and now you're trying to emulate yourself, I trust that these fine folks won't get offended by you talking,
right.
about it. So anyways, jump right in. Who's one of the people that comes to mind?
Yeah. So I had a friend of mine. We were young, obviously, and at the time that Jerry was doing this, I didn't realize what he was doing. I was probably too young to really kind of understand it. But as I got a little older, I began to really appreciate what he had done and the legacy that he's still creating. We were both young. We had families and we're going. And he had made a conscious effort to buy his first small tract of land. And And he and I had talked. I bought mine about the same time he bought his, and neither of us knew how we were going to pay for it. And but we found a way. We found a way to make it happen. So over the years, I watched him take that first step of that. I think his first piece of property was like 27 acres or so. And he held on to it, and he developed it a little bit, and he let that equity build. And so he wound up selling that. I think it was like 5 or 6 years later, as his children got older and they began to ride these their own four-wheelers. Back in that time, nobody cared if your 5-year-old was riding a four-wheeler around. So
Yeah.
anyway, and he had told me in a conversation one time when we were probably about 30 that this was his retirement plan. And his retirement plan was to roll equity into these smaller tracts of land so that he could comfortably retire and chase his passion of traveling to hunt and fish and enjoy the outdoors all over the country. And he now, I am sure, the last I had spoke to him, regarding some business, I think he owns 5 or 6 rather lucrative farms there in Western Kentucky at this point. He was
Okay.
looking at one in Indiana. I'm not sure if he purchased it or not, but a very passionate guy about hunting and fishing. Very good man, very good father, good husband. Just good family. He raised good kids, but he viewed it not so much as just a financial investment. He viewed it as an investment of time with his family and his kids. He used these farms to essentially as a place that he could spend quality time with his kids and his wife. And so, yes, it was a good financial move for him. But, the reality is when you look back at it, I'll bet you the money is not where that value was for him. I bet it was being able to take his sons, and I know he has 2 daughters as well, and I bet you that they wouldn't take that time back for anything. And I know that, my first couple of pieces, I wasn't sure I was going to get a loan for him. As a matter of fact, Luther financed the first 2, and then I think I was able to have a little bit of a down payment once I paid capital gains, to be able to buy the next one. So, of course, how we buy and sell is a little different now. But so, yeah.
So what, that story resonates with me because it's the same as so many people that I can think of that I've watched in their careers, or I've watched either professionally or personally in their careers, that it's always the money, the success, the financial success is not the end goal for them. It was always, and I'm hearing this in the story you've said, is that it's a lifestyle thing. It's a lifestyle decision. It's a lifestyle goal for that person. And for me, that's the same thing. Land is going to be a vehicle for me to get where I want to go. And then in my world and in my journey, land is going to be where I land at the end.
Right.
Pun intended. So it's interesting. That story is just so similar to some of the ones that I hear, but I'm curious, what do you feel like? And I already know, I've had the fortune of knowing Bryan's had a really incredibly interesting story in Montana recently.
Mm-hmm.
Has some of the story of watching that journey, with Jerry, has some of the story that you've seen there played out in your own career?
It has. I had developed a friendship. The gentleman's passed away now, but along that 681 corridor with a guy named Alan Elberfeld, and my children were raised on that farm. And obviously, I've probably had an extraordinary experience in my life and during my children's life that not many people go through, which kind of affected some paths as well. But yeah, we also, I took a look at Montana. I could see the population growth. And felt like I we knew where a really good investment may be by watching this population growth start. And we did
we
really
don't have
well
to, we don't have to dive deep. I'm putting Bryan on the spot, but but watching, for me, the diving deep on another day is warranted. But what you watched Jerry do you feel like you were able to see that play out when you were able to make your own moves? And I know Montana was one of them.
For sure. That was his seeing his path and seeing the results of his path, seeing his children be so well-rounded, see him so well-behaved, seeing him be stable. It was good to see. It was really good to see. And I know that that's the right path. And I think it's the right path probably for most of us in this world, And so your children, there's nothing more important than investing in them. And again, I was probably too young to understand that as I was watching it and while we were going through it. But as I've gotten older, I really admire him for that. And, he's the legacy that he has built through his land acquisitions is, I admire him for it. It's really, really, he's not only built fortune, he's built good people too. So,
Yeah. It just, the last thing I would say in regards to this, because we see these stories all the time. It's what drives me to do what I do. It's what, the success of others drives me, not in a jealous way, in a way of empowering me, in a way to know how to get forward and to build a path forward by watching other people's journey. It makes me think of the difference between success and wealth, and just the vast difference because wealth is measured to me just incredibly differently than what people might think just right off the cuff, to say someone has a lot of money in the bank or someone has a lot of assets or someone has a lot of whatever. Wealth to me is having what I would say TMO, time, money, and options.
Right.
And some people have time and no money, and some people have options and no time, and some people have no money or neither time or options. And so to have all three, time, money, and options, I find myself gravitating to the people that have created that legacy.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah. So, all right, we have covered a little bit of the Bryan Tannerisms today, a little bit. I think people are getting a glimpse of why we're going to have you around so much. And just kind of to segue into a sneak peek, I've asked Bryan to help me in the business with keeping Bryan may fill a feeder for me one day, and he may meet somebody and sell them a farm because he can show you why this farm's going to set up and hunt the way it's going to set up. Of course, if you're looking at something for me and you ask that Bryan talk to you about why it would be good, I'm sure we could happily set that up. That's not the purpose of this last segment. The purpose of this last segment is, Bryan, how do people get a hold of you? What are you excited about here that you alluded to in the beginning? You're going to start something that's new and exciting and could be beneficial for our listeners. You talked about it being in the summer, but how do people get a hold of you? This is the part where we get to know, how can people get into the world of Bryan Tanner?
Yeah. So here's something that, I have a couple of things going on now, and I am not just involved in the hunting world. I'm actually pretty deeply involved in the fishing world too.
It is true. He has begged me to go fishing. It is true.
So I'm a guide. I work for my wife, Mary, who owns a company called the Muskie Experience. We're located here in Central Ohio. Muskie fishing is a real passion of mine. I love to do it. And I don't know why, but that surprises people sometimes when they find that out about me. I've been muskie fishing my whole life, but everybody's like, so you like the muskie fish, huh? So I think I sent your assistant a couple of pics, but so you can go to the muskieexperience.com and reach out to me there if you'd like. I think all the social media handles, they have them all. I don't even know what they all are, quite frankly. So someone else runs
Bryan
that side.
Tanner. Yeah,
but
with the Y.
So I know one is the muskingexperience.com. So, or you can find us on Facebook at the same. And you can actually just call me personally. A lot of the consults that I have done recently, when I say recently, over the last 3 to 4 years or so, have been really on a personal level, and people have just reached out by word of mouth. But it's kind of gotten a little bit, I don't want to say overwhelming because I love it so much, but I get a lot of requests anymore. And so we have decided to start something here this summer where we're going to offer some consulting services, and that'll start a little. This is March of 2025. I hope to have it up and running by probably June of this year, where we'll have some land consulting, hunting consulting type situations. I get a lot of topo maps sent every year and things of that nature. And I want to be able to provide a small service as well as a large service. If you want me to come and walk your farm with you and talk with you and give you an opinion, I'd be happy to do that. And so, but right now you can just reach out to me at 740-624-3534. I'd be happy to talk to you, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. I mean, and I can testify that he will talk to you and he will be intentional with you. So this is not only exciting for them, because I think this is an incredible opportunity for Bryan because of his unique skill sets, but it's exciting for me because I know I'm going to exploit him to death on the stuff that we're already doing together and just the chance to help him grow. We haven't talked about the idea of like him being in, a wing of Legacy Acres and kind of my business, but we've worked so well together that if you follow us or look at one of our farms or you're aspiring to buy a farm from us, I'm happy to bridge the gap between myself, Bryan Tanner, and how much he's helped me. So I couldn't be more excited because I think this is a perfect fit for the season that he is in his life and the season that he's in as a professional. I think this will just be a really, really good marriage for the juices that get him going when he wakes up in the morning, versus the juices that help pay bills. So I know for him, he's already proven to me it's not about money. He's helped me a ton. That has had nothing to do with the bottom line. And that's the kind of people I resonate with. So I could not be more happy for him. But if you guys want to reach out, he just gave you his number. Go find him online, BryanTanner. This one's been a good one, but I'm telling you, we're going to have to bring him back for the ones that are probably my favorite of Bryan is reading topo maps, just kind of the deerisms, if you will. I think the thing that we'll probably have to study and go through on our next podcast together is having Bryan talk to you about all the phases of the whitetail season.
Yeah.
And all the things that we watch and all the things that he's taught me to watch and to key in on and all the things to prepare for. It is only things that come from someone who spent as much time in the woods as he has and as much time studying the game as he has. So I can't wait to bring Bryan back for more segments, but I hope this one's been actionable for you guys. I really hope that you can see that we're trying to be intentional with being able to empower you on your journey to buying and selling land. If you're going to be like me and actually do that either on the side or as a full-time gig, but I'm really passionate about, and I know Bryan is as well, the people that are going to get into this for their first time to buy your own piece of dream dirt and start that journey of creating your own family legacy. So hopefully today's been empowering. Hopefully it's been helpful for you guys in that sense. And if I can't make you a better investor or hone your investing skills, or we can't make you better land managers, then we haven't done our job. Hopefully we've benefited in one of those lanes for today, and we'll see you guys on next week's podcast. And that's going to wrap up this week's episode. If you're finding value in this content, we'd love to hear from you. It'd mean a lot if you could share with us how this podcast is helping you on your journey and let us know of any topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Be sure to connect with us on all social platforms at Legacy Acres Land Co. and subscribe to stay updated on when new episodes drop. We hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Legacy Through Land podcast, and we'll see you next week.